So enough with autopilot. What about when you're driving the car? Is the car actually fun to drive? For me, when I review a car, I want to think about three things. So it's the handling, how does the steering feel? It's the road noise, how loud is it, particularly on the highway? And then how do these things combine? So the third thing is just, do I get that magical feeling driving a curvy, fun road, or even just cruising on the highway, going straight, or stuck in traffic? It's not always going to be great, but often a well-built car, if it hits all these things, can make even the mundane drive to the most fun road that much more pleasurable. And of course, there's another well-known competitor, another automotive company that advertises sheer driving pleasure. It's BMW. And so how does Tesla compare against the best? BMW, Audi, Mercedes, etc. About it is, of course, just how quiet it is. It sort of glides very nicely at low speeds, and particularly coming from a traditional gas car turning to this, it's very different and pretty great. And the throttle response is immediate, and it's pretty great. So yeah, unfortunately I don't have the right setup to do a proper acceleration test, but you've seen plenty of those. Woo. So there's just a little 0 to 30. The glass roof has its many small joys. So for handling, the main thing I'm going to be comparing it to is BMWs. Simply, I used to work there. I've driven just about every BMW, every modern BMW they've made, so 2 Series through 7 Series. And obviously, where it compares the most, and within that category, would either be the 5 or the 6 Series. Now, BMW has since rebranded, so the 6 Series is now the 8 Series. But at the time when I was there, we had the 5 Series and the 6 Series, which the previous one was the F10, and there's been replaced by something called the G30. So in any case, I drove a 640i, and then I drove the new G30 version of the 540 and then the M550. So that's sort of the comparison. The basic conclusion, the Tesla, one of the things that's really nice about it is because of the low center of gravity, and because it is a heavy car and the weight on the bottom, it feels so planted. And the all-wheel drive is really great, and I really felt very well planted in the Tesla in a way that actually I didn't feel in the BMWs. And particularly driving on rain and things like that, the Tesla also seemed to have an advantage where you just felt kind of more glued and less likely to maybe hydroplane or something like that. It just seemed from the weight and the all-wheel drive. Now, on the other hand, though, the BMWs definitely felt more nimble. And there was something in the 6 Series in particular, the suspension was really special, and it just felt like you're driving on glass the whole time. And that was pretty magical, and the Tesla couldn't reproduce that. Furthermore, when you go to the newer 5 Series, the G30, it felt so much more nimble, and it did feel sort of more nimble than the Tesla. It almost felt like a 3 Series, like a smaller car. With steering feel and things like that, the Tesla was somewhat in the middle. I actually thought the steering feel was better than the older 6, and in some ways the Tesla felt, a little more compact or agile than that older 6. Although it was great on glass, it also felt a little like a boat, but it was, it was a fun boat. The Tesla felt a little more nimble, but then compared to the new G35 series, that blew it out of the water. That felt so much more nimble, and so I imagine, I don't know, the new 8 series, I imagine they feel great as well. So I would say Tesla did a great job considering the size of the car and considering the weight of the car, and obviously that low center of gravity helps, and the center of mass, and all these things, but there's still room for improvement as far as just handling feel and enjoyment and going through corners and pushing corners hard, things like that. Now, I want to talk about noise levels for a little bit, because I don't know about you, but for me, this is like a huge experience of the car. A quiet car on the highway, it just makes such a better experience. If you're driving with friends, you can have nice conversations at a normal volume. There's less fatigue on long drives. If you're listening to music, you don't have to have it so loud and you can hear the mid-range, different notes. So I think it's pretty important. Now, sadly, I do not have any footage for you guys. I took measurements. I actually used a number of apps, and then I settled on just using the Apple Watch for consistency. So all of these numbers, just come from the Apple Watch, kind of held at ear level or different parts of the cabin while I was sitting in the passenger. It's not scientific, but it does give you an impression. And these are the cars that I had available at the time. Unfortunately, I don't actually have a comparison from either the 5 or the 6 Series BMW, which would really be the same class. Um, but as you can see, even without that, a 3 Series is actually much quieter than a Tesla Model S. And I think this really kind of blows my mind. Now, the scale is a little, it's just, we're going from 61 to 69. The bars may be misleading. I didn't mean to do that intentionally. The difference isn't so huge, but it still is difference and it's still noticeable. And so, yeah, if you get the 2020 BMW, just because that's the G20, the new 3 Series, and then I just happen to have older 2008, which is the E90. In any case, both are quieter than the Tesla, and anecdotally, I can, confirm this is true beyond the decibel reading. And then also, a family relative's car is a brand new Subaru Ascent. It's an SUV, totally different thing. But this was interesting because this is not a luxury brand, and yet this Subaru is a decent amount quieter. And honestly, I think this is just unacceptable. This is the weakest point of the Tesla, and it's just the details and the fit and finish. And I mean, you're talking about $100,000 car, and this thing is that freaking loud on the highway. I mean, louder than a Subaru, louder than a 12-year-old BMW. It's inexcusable, it's unacceptable, and honestly, I hate it. It's a small thing, but it's one of the reasons until Tesla fixes this, I will not be buying their cars again. It just to spend this kind of money, I mean, a 6-figure car, the sticker price on that Model S is 109K, and these are the acoustics and these are the experience. They have to do better. It's just unacceptable. A quick note also to go on this, beyond just raw noise and decibels, there's a difference between road noise, tire noise, and then also air noise. I will say the Tesla air noise is pretty well sealed. It's just as good as the others as far as air noise. Where it really just failed and where a lot of that sound is coming is through the road, is through the ground. And so, in the other car, in the BMWs, you feel isolated from the ground. In the Tesla, and this is strange because there's all these batteries underneath you and everything, but I don't know, they just didn't isolate at all. And you just hear everything coming up through the tires and through the road. And it was very frustrating. This also affects, too, the frequency. This is another thing, as luxury cars do a good job. It's not just, but the BMW helps filter out. So even when you hear the noise in the BMW, a lot of the mid to high range is totally gone. And the only thing you hear is like a low hum. And so this is important, too, because whether it's loud or not, that at that frequency, it doesn't interfere with conversation and it doesn't interfere with music. If you get into a cheaper car like a Honda or Toyota, which, yes, those would be worse than the Tesla. I don't have measurements, but they are much worse. A lot of Hondas and Toyotas, and yeah, those, you hear all the mid and high range, and it interferes with conversation and music. It's very frustrating. Anyway, the Tesla was kind of right there. It wasn't quite as bad as a Honda or Toyota, but it was closer to feeling like you're driving a Honda than it did feeling like you're driving a BMW, which again, I think is totally unacceptable. And so all those things in the Tesla, like having to turn up the music loud on a highway trip or talk louder with your occupants, you'd have to do. And yeah, you just don't expect that when you're paying that kind of money for a car. So that was pretty disappointing. If any of you have a Model 3 or a newer Model S, I am really curious to know, did they fix this? Or even a Model Y or Model X? Because I hope that they do, and I hope that it gets better. I think this is unacceptable. So yeah, if you leave a comment below, I'd be really curious, has Tesla fixed this with the newer cars? That would be great. And I should also say, maybe I got a lemon, maybe I was unlucky, because when I first got my Tesla, there's another issue that I haven't actually mentioned before, but within the first, I think, month, maybe week of having the car, the air conditioning pipe like was not connected properly and it burst and it actually flooded the entire carpet floor with water. And so, I got the car and the very first week I took it on a road trip to LA, and it wasn't until I was with my friends we got to our destination LA and we realized that the floor of the car, the carpet where our feet in the front was like sopping wet. Very frustrating, very confusing. At first, I thought, did someone spill a drink, whatever. Then I realized the water was actually coming, from the bottom up, right? It was seeping from the bottom up into the car. Anyway, we took it to a Tesla service center right away. Thankfully, they popped it open, and again, it just comes to manufacturing defects or whatever. I'm not sure. Our car was, my car was it was on a lot. It was a show car, and so I think it hadn't been turned on in a while. And then when I bought it, and then all of a sudden the AC. Anyway, somehow the pipe just wasn't even connected or it popped loose. And so it was just spilling water and seeped into the whole thing. In any case, they replaced everything. They fixed everything for free. Obviously, I didn't pay anything. They fixed the pipe right away so I could use the car. But then later when I got home, we actually had the entire carpet removed. And so they ripped it out and then replaced it. In any case, I do wonder so that's great, they did it all for free, but I wonder when they stripped out the carpet and then put in new carpet, did they like forget the noise dampening material, or did materials change? Was there, when they do it in the factory, is it sealed better? And when they replace it, is it not sealed as well? Because I never measured it, but it almost immediately after that trip, it felt louder. And so the whole time I had the car, it just felt very loud. So on the one hand, you could say, maybe I did get a lemon, but it's still, sucky. And it was a lease, so I just lived with it for 3 years. Perhaps I should have argued more, but I thought, okay, if they, quote unquote, fix it for free, then fine. In any case, if I had bought the car, I would have been pissed, and I probably would have returned it right away. I would think. So yes. Suffice to say, I hope Tesla's gotten better, and maybe, both with time, and maybe my car was defective. On the other hand, this is all kind of part of the whole Tesla experience that's honestly really shitty, is that like you never get a good experience, there's all these little gotchas, and if you look at the Model 3 and the Model Y, all their manufacturing defects and all these things. So it's very frustrating, because I guess what I want to say is I want to love this car, and I just don't, because they cut so many corners. So if Elon or Tesla or anyone on the team, if you're listening, you gotta up your game, because yeah, you're pushing in the technological department, but you're lacking so much in the experience department and actually caring for your customers. And so I love that you're changing the industry, but I'm really hesitant to get another Tesla. At this point, I would prefer, when BMW finally makes an electric car that doesn't suck, getting one of those. But, and I think that's the dilemma, right? Is Tesla has the best tech, but they kind of suck at making cars still. And then all the other traditional car makers are so sort of lazy and slow to really push electric. And so, yeah, I think it's a little disappointing, even which option do you go with? If in a perfect world you could somehow combine BMW's fit and finish and Tesla's leading, electric battery range, well, that would be great. Quick note on acceleration and the instant torque of the electric motor in the Tesla.
There you go, it's green! Holy shit!
Yes, it's awesome. So I was just complaining about something. Now I'm going to say what I love about Tesla is that electric motor. It is freaking awesome. You don't have to worry about what RPM you are. There's no shifting. You always have maximum torque and power. And it's very addictive. It's very fun. It puts a smile on your face every time you floor it. And that is something really great and unique, of course, about electric cars, and the Teslas in particular. So, and it was interesting going back to like driving the BMW M550 and then driving the Tesla Model S for back to back. Like I said, the new M550 handled better, but even with its twin turbo V8, all these things, it felt archaic compared to the smooth instant response of the dual electric motors. And I don't even have the performance Model S. So everything you read about that is true and great, and it'll be excited to see more electric cars in the future. So where does that leave us with the Model S? Does it give us that magical feeling? For a Model S, is it worth 100 grand? No, it's really not. Maybe the new Model 3, maybe a performance Model 3 might change my mind. I don't know. But there's enough things about the Model S. Again, I wanted to love this car, but I just didn't. It did not give that magical experience. It felt oddly sterile, and so there wasn't an emotional connection to the car that actually I felt with a lot of BMWs. And so I guess I'm just very mixed about it. It's hard to say. Because on the one hand, you have good but not great handling. You have amazing acceleration in the electric drivetrain, but then you have horrible fit and finish, horribly loud cabin, and these things that probably the biggest thing they just take away from the experience. There's also stuff about range and going electric and all that. I think I've covered it in another video. Real quick, if you own a house and you can charge at home, it's pretty great. It's not an issue. If you don't and you're hunting from supercharger to supercharger, that also takes away, a bit from the fun of it. That being said, being able to floor it and not worry about gas mileage is pretty cool. And you just know you can, like I had free supercharging, so you just charge it up. But then waiting at the supercharger, well, that's not fun either. So overall, the Tesla's a good car, an important car, great for the industry in the future, but at least specifically with a 2017 Model S, it is not worth the money. And so I guess ultimately I was disappointed because I was really excited in getting into it, and it was, fun for a while, and then living with it these things sort of became frustrating. So yeah, it's a bit hard to say, a bit of a mixed bag. I'm hoping the newer ones are better, but I'm also curious to see what the traditional car makers can do with electric cars as well. So far, admittedly, those have been disappointing. So, well, you'll see in my next video. That's why I just went back to a used car, because honestly, all the new cars are disappointing.